Welcome to the Triathlon Nutrition Academy podcast, the show designed to serve you up evidence-based sports nutrition advice from the experts. Hi, I'm your host Taryn, accredited practicing dietitian, advanced sports dietitian, and founder of Dietitian Approved. Listen as I break down the latest evidence to give you practical, easy to digest strategies to train hard, recover faster, and perform at your best. You have so much potential, and I want to help you unlock that with the power of nutrition. Let's get into it. My guest today is Kirsty, one of the Triathlon Nutrition Academy athletes. Although she's only done phase 1, we won't hold that against her, but she's not technically a triathlete. And despite her thick accent, which you will hear, she does live in New Zealand. And she recently raced the Coast to Coast in February, which is an epic multi-day event that I'll let her tell you about. So welcome, Kirsty.
Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. So can you kick us off by explaining to the listeners what is the Coast to Coast event?
The Coast to Coast, as it is named, essentially is a race from the coast of one side of New Zealand to the coast of the other side of New Zealand. So one of the kind of epic things about it is you basically start at Greymouth and everybody goes and puts their hand in the water. You're trying to chase the water to get your hand in it without getting your feet wet. And then same thing at the other side, once you finish, it's trying to hit New Brighton where you're a little bit less concerned about getting your feet wet. And the aim is that you're going to cross the country, which is 243 kilometres on foot, bike and in a kayak.
Over 2 days, you did the 2-day event. There is the longest day, which is a 1-day event as well, which is like the World Multisport Championship event. But you're crazy and you decided to do the 2 days.
Yeah, I think you've got to be a special kind of person to do the 1 day. I've definitely got a few friends in that boat, but I think it's like everything. It's when you train for something like Ironman or those top end events, you kind of sacrifice a lot for the amount of training you need to do. The cut-offs for 1 day are pretty strict. You've got to, I think, cover Goats Pass in pretty much 5 hours, which is about 30k with 1,000 meters of elevation. And when I say that, it's not really trail at all. It's like, here's 1.5 kilometers of me running up a river, literally running up the river. Or here's the boulders that are bigger than my car that I'm trying to scrabble up.
Yeah, I told you she had a thick accent. We might have to subtitle you, Kirsty, so we can understand what the heck you're saying. But do you want to explain what the longest day event is, like what they actually do in that day?
So it's essentially the coast to coast. You complete the entire thing in the cut-off, which I think is 14 hours. You start at 6 a.m. So it starts off as a 2.2 kilometre run. You go into a 55 kilometre bike, which you're allowed to draft in. And then it's 30 kilometres over Goats Pass, which is one of the passes in the middle of Southern Alps. You then have a 15 kilometre bike, really just to get you to the start of the kayak, with a little 800 metre run because they don't let you ride down that gravel road. It's then officially 67, but really 71 kilometres in your kayak. I think that's probably to do with over the years the river having changed. And then the final 70 kilometres into Christchurch, which you're always quite glad about. You think it's going to be fine until you're in a headwind for every part of that 70 kilometres. You think, oh, I'm in this straight, it's brilliant. We're going fine, we're in a headwind, but we'll get there. You turn a corner, you're still in a headwind. You turn another corner, you're still in a headwind. You're in the finish straight, you're still in a headwind. Just to make it a little bit more interesting at the end, there's basically, you finish on the beach in New Brighton and they basically build a bank of sand, which is, 5 meters maybe. And you need to basically scrabble up this bank to actually get across the finish line in your bike cleats mainly.
Crazy. So the male, like the elite winner, did that in 11 hours, 40 minutes and 15 seconds this year, Sam Manson. And the female winner, Simone, who's a crazy German, she's won it like 4 times in a row or something, did it in 13 hours, 11 minutes and 18 seconds. Like, it's a massive day. You think Ironman's hard? This is hard.
Yeah, I came from a biking background on the track, came into triathlon when I was in New Zealand, and then I've got a bit more into multi-sport and adventure racing. But when you watch like a Braden Curry win coast to coast like he did last year when Ironman got cancelled, compared to winning Ironman, so much of it is the unknowns. You don't know some of the conditions that are going to be like in the day. You can have 30 degrees, you can have the river level's been really high, you can have, like this year, very little water in the river, which meant the river lines were really difficult. And I found that with adventure racing as well. Like Ironman tests you in a continuous way. You need to make sure you're still there after 15, 16 hours, but adventure racing tests you in a, you're mentally tired and you still have to keep making decisions.
There's so much nutrition in that, actually. So why on earth did you want to do this event?
It's really interesting when you do something like Ironman here, like people just be like, oh, what's next? Coast to coast? You're going to do the coast to coast? And I was always like, nah, like maybe some point in the future. And I suppose for me, it's like I can run, I can bike, but the kayak's the thing that makes or breaks your race. And it's obviously one of those things, it's not just kayaking down the river, it's grade 2 rapids. It's the fact you spend a lot of time upside down your boat when you're learning, etc. But I found after Ironman, I probably had 12 to maybe 18 months where I pretty much just got fat and sat on my couch. I've done this race. That was incredible. But what's next? Like I raced the marathon in Hawaii that year, I reckon. Like we'd got really cheap flights out in New Zealand. Me and my mate went. There was a marathon on. We're like, yeah, we'll give that a crack. And it was like, I didn't really do a lot of training. I got my tonsils out 8 weeks before and I got through it. But you got through it because you got this mindset from Ironman that it was going to be fine. You just knew you had to keep putting one foot in front of the other. I've done that after 180 Ks. It's going to be fine on its own. And I think coast to coast like that, it was the big enough carrot. It was the, yep, I'm ready to get back on my bike and do some proper training. I want to get fitter again. I want to have that kind of drive to challenge myself.
You need the challenge to get you out of that slump in a way.
Yeah. Something that gets you out of bed in the morning. Something that you're like, I'm willing to get up before work and put some training hours in.
And so how long out did you start preparing for something like this?
So in order to do it, you've got to get your grade 2 kayak certificate. So you've got to basically go on a 4-day course and prove that you can paddle in water, that you can self-rescue, that you can rescue with a rope, that you've got a certain range of skills. I think I did my grade 2 kind of like in September, but just before I'd signed up, I'd kind of made the decision that even if I didn't get an entry, I was going to have a crack at it. So even if it wasn't this year, so I started paddling 2020. I'd bought a boat. I'd done a few intro lessons down at our local club in Christchurch. And it was that whole thing about starting to look at, okay, what's your nutrition going to look like over the fact it's a 2-day event? What's it going to look like the fact you're in a boat for 6 hours? How do you actually eat in that situation? What's it going to look like in terms of your recovery? Because day 2 is always going to be bad in the morning. How do you make it less bad? So I reckon those were my 2 big things. I kind of knew if I did enough, I could get through the race. But the kayak was going to be my biggest challenge. And then if I got my nutrition right, it was going to help me, even if training hadn't been perfect.
So you gave yourself a couple of years, but then you only did your kayaking, 5 months before the race?
What do you mean?
Did you do your level 2 in September and you raced in February?
I did my level 2 September the previous year.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah, so
I was like, man, that's a tight turnaround.
Yeah, no, I'd given myself a year because they basically say that's the one that you can't kind of cheat the time on. Like you can't do intense stuff and you will get better, but it's really interesting to watch some of the internationals come over this year, fly in 10 days out from the race. And they're like, oh, I learned to do my level 2 in a harbour in the Netherlands. And you're like, cool, grade 2 is going to be fun for you. Yeah. So it's like a lot of them have got a signed off certificate, but there's a massive difference between getting your grade 2. Like you can do it in the harbour in Wellington. Cool. But it's absolutely nothing like being in grade 2 rapid. So the preparation for that is get in your boat, spend time in your boat, be comfortable in it, be happy to paddle in it, be happy to WEGs in it, probably learn to roll, make your life easier. And then at that point, I'm looking at race lines. I'm doing these sorts of things.
Yeah, cool. So a fair way out for paddling experience. What about how long did it take you to get prepared with things like nutrition and even just your mindset for a 2-day event?
Nutrition was one of those lots and lots of small pieces things. Like I'd sign up for the first round of TNA and got some just really good things to structure my day-to-day routine, but also my recovery. And I found that was really important. But even the stuff you're going to eat pre-session, different things you can eat, how many carbs you're looking for, all those things that become really important when you're doing long stuff. Because I think on that sort of thing, you kind of know if you keep fueling your muscles, they're probably not going to give out on you in a 2-day event. Like realistically, you just watch these guys do Godzone in the last couple of weeks and you're just like, well, you do that for 7, like my body can do it for 2, it'll be fine. And I think it just becomes that process of you go out and you try things, right? I'm going to go and try this session and I'm going to eat this beforehand. Like I got into the habit of like, I'm going to eat 2 slices of toast with Nutella. And if that works, then I'm going to keep doing that because it's the sort of thing you can take with you if you toast it and it actually tastes okay. But I've got a funny story that you'll probably enjoy. So there's this race that happens basically down the coast to coast kayak race about a month, maybe 6 weeks out from the race. It's called the Classic and it's been going from like 1970 or something. Like it's been around for 30 odd years. And kayaking's like so much admin. You get your boat, you have to get to the start, you've got to have someone to pick you up at the end, you've got a car at the end, all of those things. So I'd arranged somebody to take my boat up to the race start, but I hadn't got a seat for me yet. So I'd put it out. There's a coast to coast page, and a bit like the Ironman or the triathlon community, everyone's really willing to help you. So this other guy messaged me, was like, hey, I'm already taking a couple of girls up. I'm dropping off. Like, I'll take you. And I was like, right, cool. So we got up to the start point and I'm like, right, okay, I've made these 2 slices of toast and whatever. And so I had all my stuff at my boat and I'd left and I'd gone to look for something else. And I come back and this guy that given me lift, David, was standing there and he was like, do you have a couple of slices of toast? And I was like, yep. He's like, that dog over there looks like it's just had a really good day. And this was like 8:30. And I was thinking, oh, like it's 2 hours before race start. This is really not ideal. But anyway, this guy who I've literally messaged absolute random was taking me up, like hell of a good guy who I know more now, but he was like, it's all right, when we stopped at the pie shop, I bought a bit of lolly cake. I'm sure that'll sort you out. And Kiwis will know what lolly cake is. I don't know if you guys get it in Australia.
I don't know what it is. I was going to ask you, what on earth are you talking about?
Lolly cake is this like tray bake and it's got like marshmallows and it's not like Rocky Road, it's not chocolatey, but it's like the most sugary cake you can pretty much eat in New Zealand. So he gave me that and that was all right. And then I suppose this is like what made and broke my race. The river was really low. It was running like 35 cubics. And for context, that just means there's pretty much no water in the river. The first 15 Ks of the river are braided, which means you need to pick your race line. So you need to be like, I'm going to pick this line because there's more water in it out. So I got braided out in the river and I had to carry my kayak for at least 500 meters. Anyway, so I got to the first checkpoint like probably 45 minutes later than I should have, having had this not great start to my morning. And they were like, we didn't know you were on the river because you've not followed all the routes we've let the safety crew go through. So we can't actually let you continue in the river. And it was one of those ones where I was like so frustrated. And yeah, I had a little cry about it and was just like, I don't know if I can do this race. Like, I don't know if I'm going to make it to the end of this race. Like, I can't do this. So for coast to coast, you need a support crew. You basically need someone who's nice/stupid enough that's going to get up at 4:15 and take your kayak to the kayak start and who's going to pick up your bike and take it to places and who's going to feed you all weekend and stuff. And my support crew were epic. They're 2 really good mates I know from actually triathlon. And I'd messaged them and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to do this race. Like, if you guys have taken time off work, like at what point do you need to make a decision before you not get paid for those days? Like, what are we going to do? And you realize that you put the right people in your corner when they're like, nah, like it's just a bad day. You're just really tired. Like you're frustrated. We're going to go away for the weekend anyway. Marie was like, I've already taken it off work. Like, it doesn't matter. Like if you don't race, you don't race, but don't worry about us. And then there's a really good community around kayaking in Christchurch because there's obviously a lot of it for coast to coast. So a couple of really amazing people basically were like, look, we're going down the river with another couple of people. We'll take you down the river. And then literally was like, do these things, try this. And it was just that little bit of confidence I needed. I just needed a trip where I got all the way down and didn't swim. I think you can practice lots of things in training with your nutrition for the kayak, but it's really different to what you're going to do necessarily if you're racing the lines. There's definitely parts in the gorge you can stop and stuff, but you're far more restricted than you are to say like on a bike or on a run as to what you can pull out of pocket and open. Like you've always got to have one hand on your paddle, otherwise it's floating down the river.
That's what I wanted to talk to you about is like, what did you actually do with your nutrition on the day? So like talk me through some of the strategies you implemented on day one and even some of the things that you had to adapt on the fly based on what was going on.
Before I'd got to the point, I'd kind of realised that I'd tried a lot of different products, or I tried to buy a lot of different products, but you're kind of restricted to what you can get in New Zealand and or what's super expensive. So I'd messed around a little bit with the Martin gel stuff and their liquid nutrition. And I knew that the weather was potentially going to be really variable. I was kind of on the thing that I didn't actually want to drink any of my calories on the bike and or run, on the consensus that I could take something and add it, or I could have gels, but at least I knew they were separate. And if I drank, I knew kind of what I drank. I suppose one of the differences between using things like bottles in your bike and having a pack in your back is you kind of have an idea of how much lighter it is, but you can't be like, oh, like a lot of triathlons very much like, okay, at 15 minutes, you need to drink X number of mils and you can mark it out in your bottle or whatever. Adventure racing is just a bit more chill than that. You're kind of like, well, we'll do a bit of this and it'll be okay. And if I haven't quite drank enough, then it's probably not going to be optimal, but also you kind of know what you're in the ballpark. So bike at the start, I had a bento box and the first bike's only 55 Ks and I knew there was going to be a lot of drafting. You could basically get yourself in a group, save energy. And really what I took in the bike was gels. That was just easy. We were drafting a lot and I was probably faster than I would have been going by myself. And just, it was one of those quick and easy, utilize it and move on sort of thing. When I got to on the run, I'd made a choice. I don't really enjoy sweet stuff later on in the day. I don't know what you get over it. Your taste buds change. It's a weird concept. If you haven't raced really long, you won't really know what I'm talking about. But I decided the night before that I was going to, like, potatoes are always a good way to do it. And I'm far too lazy to actually deal with that or cook them, even though it's in accommodation. So I went to Domino's and I bought a pizza and I bought some wedges. And on race day, I took 2 slices of pizza and half a box of Domino's wedges, plus all the like gels and stuff with me as well. And I was kind of like to myself, right,
Taryn's going to kill me.
Well, no, Taryn's always said if it was carbohydrates, she said, don't choose the thin crust pizza. And you said, don't put loads of toppings on it. That was the rules when when we were talking about pizza.
It's funny what you absorb. Out of all the things I teach you, that's the things that you absorb.
I think what you realise in these events is you've got to do the things that are going to mentally make you happy, because actually there's some points you're going to be in the hole 7 hours in and it's going to be a sad face. And how do you get through it? So we got off the bike and actually had a really good bike. Was really happy with it, got into transition and got out of transition. That was fine. And then I was like, oh, my back's quite tight. This isn't great. But what I'd done was I was like, right, if you get to Goat's Pass, you can eat your 2 slices of pizza. Like, life will be great. Like, that's what you need to look forward to. Anyway, for anyone that isn't listening, there's a lot of river crossing. So it's really common when you're hiking in New Zealand. But I think river crossing here is slightly different. There's probably more of it and they're slightly higher. But the first river crossing came up to my waist. So bear in mind, I'm 168 centimetres. I'm not the shortest person in the race, and it was up at my waist. And so you basically find someone to hold on to cross the rivers with. So I started off and I had some gels and like I was going okay. I was just kind of getting through. But as the race wore on, my back was tighter. It was as if my shoulders were tight and my glutes were tight and my back was the bit in the middle that was getting pulled. So it almost felt like down my left-hand side was just a tight muscle the entire time. And I'm sure that's not great if you're running on road, but if you're basically on rock and off balance and stuff, it was a bit of a struggle. So my run time wasn't great, but it did mean that when I hit points, I kind of knew how many carbs I kind of had to consume to get there. And I knew roughly where my race time was going to be. But yeah, the pizza definitely got eaten earlier in the piece than it normally would have. But for that, the other difference is, so you have to carry your emergency kit, you have to carry your waterproof jacket, your waterproof pants, your thermal base layer, your top and bottom, your woolly hat, your emergency blanket, all that sort of stuff. So you don't necessarily want your food to be an extra weight. That definitely came into the considerations of, would I have taken more foosballs or would I have taken OSMs? It's kind of the trade-off between what's got nutritional value, what's got your carbohydrate load in it, and then what you're actually willing to carry for your race, plus probably two hours of extras just in case you end up somewhere you shouldn't. So I definitely had some gels, ate my 2-piece of pizza earlier, all those sorts of things. And then I got to a point and I was like, I don't feel amazing. Didn't feel terrible, but didn't feel amazing. And was very much like, I've had this point before. And it was really interesting. It was like one of those moments where you're like, I've done this before. And it was a bike training session that I'd done that was relatively long and had consumed a lot of gels. And I can't describe it. It was just like, this is near my point. This is near the point where you can go one way or the other. Like if you consume loads more here, it's going to go badly for you. And if you back off, then it'll be okay. And I kind of knew I'd front-ended my bike, knowing that it was going to be much easier to digest in the bike than it would be in the run. So I kind of front-ended my nutrition on the bike. And then it meant that on the run, when I hit that point and I was 4 or 5 hours into the race, it was actually okay because I knew I was going to have enough in the tank to get down. Wasn't going to be great. Wasn't maybe going to be peak, but I wasn't in peak shape at that point anyway, so it didn't really matter. But yeah, we got there.
It's nice to have the ability to fix something. You know, you've got enough knowledge that you knew what the problem was and then you knew how to resolve that in a racing situation. So one of the things I really like to teach my athletes is how to be independent and self-sufficient, so that you can change things on the fly. Like you're not hard and fast fixed with this one plan that you don't know anything about. You have the ability to count carbs in your head. You know what your targets are, you know what it feels like if you've got that wrong, and then how to fix it.
One of the things I've learned about that is just that here's how many carbs that potentially I do want. Here's what I want. So if I'm like maximal compared to just aerobic, and then where that kind of line is. And then actually, well, does it matter if I'm not at that top end of that? No, probably not. What's the bottom end of that? Will that actually work?
Yeah. Are you a triathlete sick of fumbling around in the dark with your nutrition? Is nutrition the missing link in helping you reach your goals? And do you want to maximize your training efforts and level up your performance? Of course you do. Come and join me for free at Fuel School. It's a free 3-day live and online nutrition training week. and I've designed it to give you the nutritional edge in 2024 and lay the foundation of your day-to-day fueling and race nutrition. It's on the 14th to the 16th of January, 9 a.m. Brisbane time, so Australian Eastern Standard Time every day, which is 3 p.m. PST, 5 p.m. CST, and 6 p.m. EST on the 13th to the 15th of January. To register, head to fuel.school. Yep, www.fuel.school. Whether you're a seasoned triathlete or just starting your nutrition journey, this free event is your opportunity to learn from an advanced sports dietitian and triathlon nutrition specialist and transform the way you approach your nutrition for 2024. Fuel.school, it's free. I'll see you there. And is there anything that you did differently from day one to then day two? Like, did you change a strategy? Did you have to do anything different to get through the second day?
Day two was just different because you were in the kayaks. You were more restricted to what you could have. Like, if you want to open 10 gels on a run, then it's totally fine. It's easy to do. You just pull them out and you open them. On the kayak, you don't really want to be spending loads of time doing that. So I'd gone for this strategy. Over here, we've got these bars called OSMs, or 1 square meals, and they've got like 90 grams of carbs in them. You knew that you could open it, you could have a bite of it, and it would pretty much do you for 45 minutes, maybe longer. And you were just like one mouthful. So open it, one mouthful, done. You can put it back in your spray skirt or whatever. So that was definitely a change. I definitely had some gels because I've always found if you capsize your boat, one of the things you want to do after you get back in your boat and you've emptied it and stuff is actually have the sugar hit. So I always carry some gels with me, and I quite often use them for just points. If I knew I was going to be in the rapids in the next 3 or 4 kilometers, it's like, have a sugar hit, get focused, do that.
Just a bit of mental focus. If you've capsized and you've lost the mentality, like, get some fast, simple sugars to your brain quick so you can concentrate.
Absolutely. So I suppose I structured it around having OSMs at specific points in the race, knowing that I could then supplement with gels, and I knew roughly how long it would take me to get in the river and carried extras, and then I suppose extras in the back of my boat. So it just gave you options. This is what I think I'm going to do, but actually and luckily raced there, I didn't capsize my boat, but like, you capsize your boat, cool, I'm going to stop and have a gel, or those sorts of things.
I saw the female winner, Simone, had like a vest thing on that looked like she was like pregnant. Like, it was just full of all this stuff. I have no idea what was in there. I'd love to know. If anyone knows her, let's ask her. But just stuff that you could quickly get and eat because, yeah, you're in the river, can't let go. Like, how are you actually going to fuel yourself through that? Yeah,
the real interesting thing about it is you come from somewhere like triathlon where everyone's like, get aero, buy this kit, buy your wheels, do this. And you get to adventure racing, it's like, well, cool, you can go and buy your nice suit. But by the way, here's a vest you're going to wear over the top of it with your number on it. And also, you're then going to put your PFD vest on underneath that. So all that access you had for that you practice with, you're not going to have that on race day, depending on where you put your nutrition. So it's super fascinating. There's definitely points that people are super aero and do things, but it's very different because a lot of the time gains are not necessarily aero in the same way. It's very much like you make gains on the mountain run or you make gains on the boat and stuff.
Yeah, although I did see some sperm helmets kicking around for the bike. So
so if you're doing one day, you're allowed to time trial the last 70 Ks. If you're doing 2 days, you can race it. You're actually not allowed to time trial. You're not allowed to have aero bars. And I'll tell you another funny story that you're really going to appreciate here. So about, 3 weeks out from the race, my support crew had been like, right, what do you want at that last transition? Like, you're going to be probably a disaster. Like, what do you want? And I was like, I'd really like a beer. And my support crew was like, absolutely not. Like, you're not doing this. And I was like, Mark would give me one. So Mark's our husband, and I've known him for a long time. He's the guy that offered me an ice cream when I was doing Ironman. And I was like, no. And I still have regrets about that ice cream. Anyway, so we get to the bottom of the transition and I'm like, not in the best state. They're like, you're such a big smile. And I was like, because I was so glad to get out this boat after 70 Ks. Anyway, we got to transition and they're like, I've got you a beer. And then they produced a McDonald's cheeseburger. Sculled some of the beer, got on the bike, put the cheeseburger in my back pocket, got up the first hill, and then I was like, all right. And then you eat a cheeseburger and you're like, man, my life is complete. Look at me. I'm going to make it home now. Isn't this wonderful? And I think that's the point. You realise that you're there for enjoying it. I'm not sure it was the best in terms of nutrition, but what you realise when you race 2-day or longer events is kind of, you've got to keep that mental game, because actually that's the bit that keeps you going. And actually when you're in a black hole or you're not feeling great, you actually need those really small things to make you feel happy about it or to feel that you're enjoying it, I suppose. And that's my little wins, as much as you hate them. There's carbs in beer, isn't there?
Oh, let's not go down that rabbit hole. Oh my goodness. Yes, there's carbs, alcohol and muscle and performance, probably not a good mix. But like you said, like whatever gets you through mentally, because a lot of multi-day events, so much of it is mental. Like we are capable of so much more than we think we can do. And if like that made you happy and it got you to the finish line, then win.
I remember when I was doing Ironman and somebody was like, you can always take one more step. You can always take one more pedal rev. You can always put one more stroke in. And it doesn't always feel like that at the time, but I definitely had probably 2 points in the race, one on the run and one on the kayak, where they're basically like, they say to you in the run, you've got two options in getting out here. You either come out in your own, under your own steam, or you come out in a helicopter. Like that's it. And at those points, like I remember being in the kayak and being like, oh, there's still 20 Ks to go. Like this is a long way. I don't feel amazing, but I've no other way to go off the river. So I'm just going to sit here and be a little bit sad for a moment. And then I'm just going to have to start paddling again.
Such good mental toughness. So on that, do you have any advice for anyone that is interested or looking at doing the coast to coast and as an event?
I think the first thing is you've got to sort out your kayaking. That's the one thing, like even where I got to on race day, your race day would be so much better if you spent so much more time in your boat. That's the one thing that I would say about it. It's the bit that most people say challenges, and the most part that breaks people or their boats, as we saw on race day this year. There's a few boats with a few holes in them. But I reckon it's that preparation for your kayak. But then also I've kind of come into it from a background of I can bike and I can run. And what I forget quite a lot of the time is a lot of people don't have that in their arsenal. Like a lot of people are like, I don't own a road bike, or I've never ran more than 10K. And actually what you realize is you pick all these small goals. And it's like, for me, it was like, okay, get your grade 2. Okay, next I'm going to enter this event that's got like a 15K paddle. Okay, we're going to enter the classic at 60K. Okay, we're going to go and do a gorge trip. And it was the same in the bike. I remember before Ironman thinking 180K is a long way. And then kind of once you've trained to 150, you're like, oh, this will be fine. Only 30 more Ks. So yeah, I think it's that. If you want to do it, it's an amazing event. The community out there is amazing. The experience is amazing. Being at Klondike, watching people come in after the first day is incredible. Even just chat you have with people in the river, like watching other boats capsize and feeling a little bit smug about it. Or when tandems, because there's like a tandem category, which is like 2 people have to be within 50 meters of the entire race. They paddle in a duo, like a boat with 2 people in it, essentially. And they are going to be so much faster than you. So they come crashing past you and you have a bit of yarns about how your day's been and what you've been up to and all that sort of thing. But there's just points where you kind of realize that community stuff is there. And it's definitely like just the practice. If you can run, brilliant, go and try and run trail. Okay, you can run trail, perfect. Go and try and run off, like go and try and run one of the massive hilly races. Excellent. Okay, you've done a race of 1,000 meters of elevation. Go and find something that's on riverbeds. Excellent. And it's the same with the bike. Cool, you can bike. Like I find it amazing how many triathletes can't ride in a pack. A lot of people just do a lot of time trialing, and it's skills. Like I've learned it from racing on the track or road riding, but that's a massive skill. You're going to get so much faster if you can draft off people, if you can work as a team. Like my average pace for the last section was probably not quite at 30K, but pretty close to it, which is faster than I'd ever be. Like my Ironman average was like 27, 28. But we just basically, there's 3 of us basically team time trialed for 70Ks in the headwind. You'd sit in it for a couple of minutes, you'd peel off, so you'd go through. And I think it's the skill development stuff. And it's all those, it's actually doing it in your swim, doing it in your kayak, doing it in your bike, doing it in run, sorting your nutrition, and actually just practicing them. The more time you spend doing those things, like I made those nutrition decisions on the day because I'd been in that position before. And I was like, oh, I felt like this before. What can I do about it? Or you go out and paddle and you set something up, like you put liquid nutrition in your bank, and then you decide you're actually really thirsty halfway down the river. How do you compensate that? Do you put a cup in the front of your vest? That's what some people do. Do you run a tube into the river? That's what some people do. But if you've tried those things out, then at least you know.
So practice and testing it all out in training first. Great advice.
Oh, and find some good people to do it with. It's much more enjoyable if you've got good people there.
Oh, totally. There's always such a good community around things like adventure racing, triathlon, any sport really. But I find adventure races are a very tight, crazy knit community.
Yeah, I think the first time we did a 12-hour adventure race, we toyed with the idea of signing up for the 24. And then at the end of the 12, when we'd like failed to finish, you kind of realise that it's a different kind of mental skill. You kind of come back to your day job and you're like, man, I can do anything. Because if I can go and deal with that, then when you're put in situations you can't get out of, which is what essentially adventure racing is. Even like the kayak on the coast, it was like, I don't have a way out. So what are you going to do about it? And actually, when you don't have an escape route, it's much easier to keep going.
Because there's no choice. So if anyone's listening and they're like, yep, I'm that kind of crazy, I want to do it, the next one's on the 9th and the 10th of February 2024.
Nah, it's already done. So the wait list's already to get 524 people on it or something like that. But this is the point. You should sign up for your grade 2. So sign up for your grade 2 and then enter the ballot next year, because by that stage, you're going to be an absolute pro and you're going to have bought your boat and you're going to have sorted your life out.
Great advice. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Kirsty, and giving us some good insight around what coast to coast is actually like, if anyone understood a word that she said.
That's the standard of my life, though. You just need to tune in, I get told.
I can understand you. Maybe it was my time spent in the UK, but yeah, I'm sure like living in New Zealand, people are like, what?
Yeah, but then they're just like, you're from Scotland. Okay, so my granddad was from here. It's a great connection story.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Will you do it again?
I'd definitely love to have another crack at it, but if I'm honest, I'd love to have a crack at the one day, just up that level of crazy. I think it pushes you in different ways. And I think you need to be so much more on top of your ability to get through things like later in the day in the kayak, you're going to hit headwinds and things. But I think you've got to just keep those challenges ticking along. So yeah, no, it's definitely another one to the future. I would definitely highly recommend would do it again. It's amazing. But
2025.
Maybe. We're probably not going to have 18 months of getting fat after this one. So it's all good on that front. We've already got some challenges in the pipeline. So
good. Thank you so much, Kirsty.
Great to be on.
Thanks for joining me for this episode of the Triathlon Nutrition Academy podcast. I would love to hear from you. If you have any questions or want to share with me what you've learnt, email me at podcast@dietitianapproved.com. You can also spread the word by leaving me a review and taking a screenshot of you listening to the show. Don't forget to tag me on social media at dietitian.approved so I can give you a shout out too. If you want to learn more about what we do, head to dietitianapproved.com. And if you want to learn more about the Triathlon Nutrition Academy program, head to dietitianapproved.com/academy. Thanks for joining me, and I look forward to helping you smash it in the fourth leg. Nutrition!